The golden trio of Harry, Ron, and Hermione is the absolute core of the Harry Potter series, and is probably one of the most important factors in the series being as popular as it is. This also means that the dynamic between the three of them is something that really needs to be treated with both care and consideration, and unfortunately, in the case of Hermione, as with the other two, her movie characterization is really done poorly in comparison with the books. Hermione goes from a relatable, flawed person to an idealized, unrealistic superwoman, and this portrayal of hers completely unbalances the golden trio. In the books, each of the three brings their own unique strengths and weaknesses to the table, and in the end, they are all the better for having known and been friends with one another. But in the movies, their relationship is pretty much torched in favor of elevating one character above all others and effectively undermining the relationship between the three of them. This episode will most likely be the last I do in this style on the Harry Potter characters, as with this I'll have covered everybody I want to talk about. I was planning on doing the final video on one of the golden trio, and since Hermione has been quite popularly requested, I decided to do her. And to be fair, it's a fitting choice as her portrayal really significantly impacts on the other two. So let's jump right into the final video in this series of character comparisons for Harry Potter. Unlike my other videos, where I talk about Voldemort, Dumbledore, and Snape, there is really just one massive problem with Hermione that overshadows all others, which we can then break down into smaller issues. And the problem is that Hermione is too perfect in these movies. As I mentioned in the introduction, she goes from a flawed but realistic person to, and I hate to say this, but almost a Mary Sue, a character who can do no wrong, has no negative traits, and outshines all others in her interactions. Have you guys ever seen that meme about 100% versus 99% strength? I saw it with Zack Snyder's Justice League, where basically you have the entire Justice League in the same picture at 100% strength, and then you take away everybody except for Superman and you're still left at 99% strength. That's what it feels like with Hermione in these movies, taking away Ron and Harry. Book Hermione was intelligent, brave, and resourceful, but she was also rigid in her thinking, could panic under pressure, and had moments of spite and pettiness that were absent in the movie. And whilst these may sound negative, these flaws actually humanize her character and make her both more complex and more relatable. I was thinking about the best way to structure this discussion, and I think the best thing to do is to break down the problem of her inhuman perfection into multiple subpoints, which we can then explore in turn. So let's break it down into the following 3 points. Firstly, absorbing positive traits and moments from other characters, leaving them hollowed out. Secondly, glossing over or outright removing her negative traits. And thirdly, a skewed personal relationship with Harry Potter. Let's start with the first point, absorbing positive moments. In a directing decision that I just can't explain, Hermione was handed a series of extra moments which were stolen from other characters, usually Ron. And it's not like Hermione doesn't already have her own fantastic moments in the series, of course she does. So all this really does is elevate her significantly above the other cast for no reason. Ironically, I think this actually ends up diluting her own standout moments of bravery and intelligence, because the movie series just ends up bloated to the brim with moments about Hermione. Remember what Syndrome from The Incredibles says?
And when everyone's super, no one will be.
In a world where every Hermione moment is super, none of them are. You may not even register this consciously, but subconsciously, I absolutely think it makes Hermione less impressive when firstly, these moments become the norm rather than the exception, and secondly, when she becomes so impressive, she becomes unrelatable. In the books, Hermione has her own struggles, obstacles, and ideals, and these allow the readers to connect with her through their own personal experiences. And the more you can identify with Hermione and her struggle, the more you relate to the character, and therefore the deeper the connection you have with them and the series. And this is exactly what you want to achieve as a writer, and by elevating her so much, you ironically relegate her to a more superficial, less complex, and less relatable character. Let's quickfire a few examples here. I'll talk through them and I'll flash up the relevant passages on the screen. The first is in The Prisoner of Azkaban, at the end of the book when the trio are ambushed by Sirius Black and believe he's about to kill Harry. In the books, Ron heroically stands, with a broken leg, and tells Sirius that if he wants to kill Harry, he'll have to kill them too. However, in the movies, this line is instead spoken by Hermione, almost word for word. Not only that, but she stands in front of Harry, physically shielding him from Sirius, while Ron is behind both of them, lying on the floor. The second is a slightly more general one, but in the books, Hermione doesn't say Voldemort's name until the Order of the Phoenix, and even afterwards she finds it unnerving to use. In the first book, when Harry is speaking with Dumbledore at the end, Dumbledore tells him to always use Voldemort's name, saying that fear of a name only increases the fear of the thing itself. It's fitting that Dumbledore says this as the wise elder wizard, and the only man powerful enough to take on Voldemort, the only one he ever feared. In the movies, this is changed to Hermione speaking the quote instead to Lucius Malfoy in the Chamber of Secrets, which makes much less sense since she's something like 12 years old in this moment. As an aside, Lucius's face here just makes me laugh. I like to imagine he's just completely baffled by a 12-year-old speaking these words of wisdom to him, well beyond her years or experience. The final quickfire example at this point is in the Deathly Hallows when the trio have invaded Gringotts. In the books, Harry is the one to think of the idea to escape on a dragon, and funnily enough, we see that Hermione is actually shocked at his plan. And this moment perfectly encapsulates Harry: impulsive risk-taking, thinking quickly on his feet, and resilience and adaptability in a crisis, all areas which Hermione is weaker at, which we'll get onto in just a moment. In the movie, this is again flipped, and Hermione is the one to suggest escaping on the dragon, with Ron even saying that he has no ideas and that she's the brilliant one. There are many more examples, but by now you should hopefully see and understand the point I'm making, and this leads us on nicely to the second point, which is closely tied to the first anyway, and that is that Hermione's negative moments and traits are pretty much all outright removed in the movies. I don't want to just repeat myself and bore you guys, but basically this carries all the same negative effects and consequences as the first point, in reducing Hermione's character to a 2D cutout and making her again less human and less relatable. And another shame here is that I think one of J.K. Rowling's greatest strengths as a character writer is giving all of her characters, both the heroes and the villains, clear human flaws, so we even miss out on this key aspect of her writing. So to illustrate this point, I'm going to highlight a couple of Hermione's negative traits that were stripped away in the movies. So the first, she is liable to panic under pressure. Hermione's greatest strength is as an analytical thinker and planner. However, she can struggle under pressure. This is where Harry shines, and why in the books he gets a higher mark than her in Defense Against the Dark Arts. In fact, I'll flash up a quote now from Harry on exactly this topic. And this isn't to say that Harry is better than Hermione or anything like that. It's to show that they both have strengths and weaknesses, and that they can compensate for each other's weaknesses. They are stronger together than the sum of their parts. Let's quickfire another few examples. In the Philosopher's Stone, when the trio falls into the pit of Devil's Snare, Hermione panics and Ron is the one to remind her to use magic. And again, I'll flash this up on the screen if you'd like to read it. Now, I can really see this happening, not only because Hermione is panicking and not thinking clearly, but also because she grew up as a muggle, and so magical solutions to problems may not come as naturally or as intuitively to her at this point, compared with someone like Ron, who grew up in a wizard family and is intimately familiar with magic. By stripping away little details like this, we even lose this additional layer of world building and little details that J.K. Rowling includes in the books, which makes the world feel more real and thought out. In the movie, Hermione is perfectly composed, even being calm enough to throw this look at Ron. And Ron, who, by the way, poor Ron, being the butt of the joke again, completely loses his head and needs to be rescued by Hermione, who comes up with the solution all on her own. The second example is in the same book, in the scene where Harry and Ron save Hermione from the troll. In the book, again, Harry and Ron heroically decide to take on the troll to save Hermione. Instead of just flashing it up, this time I'll actually read the quote to really emphasize the differences here. Hermione had sunk to the floor in fright. Ron pulled out his own wand, not knowing what he was going to do. He heard himself cry the first spell that came into his head, Wingardium Leviosa. Again, understandably, Hermione is frozen in fear, and Ron just does the first thing that comes into his head, and saves both Harry and Hermione with a spell. To be honest, it's quite a lucky escape, which really emphasizes the danger they were in from the troll. In the movie though, Hermione explicitly tells Ron to use the Wingardium Leviosa spell, and even reminds him how to cast it, basically meaning she was the one to indirectly save not only herself, but both Ron and Harry as well. The final example for this section is in the Deathly Hallows after the trio are attacked by Death Eaters in Tottenham Court Road. Again, I'll read out this quote. "Never mind what they're called," said Hermione a little hysterically. "How did they find us? What are we going to do?" Somehow, her panic seemed to clear Harry's head. "Lock the door," he told her, and Ron, turn out the lights. This is exactly why Harry is the de facto leader of the group. Again, he demonstrates his ability to think quickly and adapt under pressure. And again we see that, and again understandably so, Hermione is feeling panicked and overwhelmed. In the movies, this moment of vulnerability from her is once again gone, and again she seems to be both calm and collected. Let's now move on to the second negative trait, that Hermione can be very rigid in her thinking and insulting to others as a result. So in the movies, Hermione was much more open-minded and accepting of others. Her biggest flaw in the books is her rigid mindset, and is even something that Dumbledore accounts for in his plan in the Deathly Hallows. Let's again run through a few different examples, and where relevant, I'll flash up related book passages. So firstly, in the books, she frequently insults Luna and completely refuses to believe in anything she says, which isn't also present in a textbook. We also see this when she refuses to follow the alternative potions instructions in the Half-Blood Prince, insisting on following the quote official version, even though she probably could have learnt a lot from the Prince's potion book if she was more open-minded. And even though Luna is shown to probably be wrong a lot, in this world of magical creatures and spells, are her beliefs really so far-fetched that they should be dismissed out of hand? And we see Hermione extend the same skepticism towards Harry. For example, refusing to believe in the existence of the Deathly Hallows, which we later find out are real. And then when Harry is having visions in the Order of the Phoenix, she completely doesn't believe that Voldemort could have captured Sirius. And although she was right in this case, it was for the wrong reasons. In this very same book, there is a precedent for Harry having true visions of Voldemort. So it's not as far-fetched as she thinks to entertain the idea that it could be a true vision. And this rigidity bleeds into Hermione's almost pathological need to be right. In The Prisoner of Azkaban, she's very insensitive when Lavender's pet rabbit dies, all because she wants to be right about Trelawney and that divination isn't true. Even if she doesn't believe, there really isn't any need for her to make a comment in this moment. And then again at the end of The Half-Blood Prince, after Dumbledore is murdered by Snape, Hermione still feels the need to mention to Harry that she was half right about the identity of the prince, as she thought it was Snape's mother, Eileen Prince. Now, I don't want it to feel like I'm just criticizing Hermione here by running through her negative traits. I actually really like her character, but the reason I'm highlighting these so thoroughly is to show that the films present a much more sanitized and less nuanced version of Hermione. And not only do these flaws in the books make her more relatable, but they also provide opportunities for character growth and development that are completely lost in the adaptations, because she has no more room to grow. It's almost like an idealized portrayal of Hermione, rather than showing her human reality. Let's now move on to the third and final major point. Her skewed relationship towards Harry. I feel like I'm repeating myself here, but again, in the books, the trio is meant to be balanced, with all three of them being close friends, and in the case of Ron and Hermione, even slowly growing into a romantic attraction. However, the films significantly alter this dynamic, and instead, Hermione seems to be Harry's closest confidant and friend, with Ron just being the third wheel in the trio. At the end of The Half-Blood Prince in the books, Harry means to go after the Horcruxes on his own, and Ron is the one to first tell Harry that he won't be alone. "We'll be there, Harry," said Ron. "What?" "At your aunt and uncle's house," said Ron, "and then we'll go with you, wherever you're going." "No," said Harry quickly. He had not counted on this. He had meant them to understand that he was undertaking this most dangerous journey alone. "You said to us once before," said Hermione quietly, "that there was time to turn back if we wanted to. We've had time, haven't we? We're with you, whatever happens," said Ron. This is such a great emotional scene in the books, with Harry's two best friends standing beside him in the aftermath of Dumbledore's death. But in the movies, and I actually can't believe this, Harry and Hermione are standing together planning what to do next, and Ron is sitting in the background. Hermione even tells Harry that Ron is okay with him and Ginny dating. What? Why is she telling Harry this? Why wouldn't Ron tell Harry himself? Which, by the way, he does in the books. Then, look at this quote from Harry when him and Ron aren't speaking in the Goblet of Fire. "Miss him?" said Harry. "I don't miss him." But this was a downright lie. Harry liked Hermione very much, but she just wasn't the same as Ron. There was much less laughter, a lot more hanging around in the library when Hermione was your best friend. There is also a scene in the Deathly Hallows where Harry and Hermione dance together after Ron has left. You can say it's platonic, but at least to me, this kind of muddies the relationship between Harry and Hermione. And in a funny way, it kind of confirms Ron's fears when he was wearing the Horcrux, that Harry and Hermione might be more than friends. Look at the contrast with the books. "After you left," he said in a low voice, grateful for the fact that Ron's face was hidden. "She cried for a week. Probably longer, only she didn't want me to see. There were loads of nights where we never even spoke to each other. With you gone." He could not finish. It was only now that Ron was here again that Harry fully realised how much his absence had cost them. There are just so many moments like this throughout the movie series, where Hermione is clearly pushed as Harry's closest friend, when really that should and always will be Ron. And so that brings us to the end of this video. So in summary, Hermione went from a relatable, flawed character to a perfect, shallow Mary Sue, and the impact of her bravery, intelligence, and loyalty was diluted amongst a sea of perfect, infallible moments, which destroyed the balancing act of the Golden Trio, and especially ruined characters like Ron, in order to lift her up. The Golden Trio is really at the heart of the Harry Potter series, and so it actually makes me sad to see their relationship and characters hollowed out like this. And as I said before, not only did removing Hermione's flaws make her less nuanced and less relatable, but it also removed any opportunity for meaningful character growth and learning experiences. As I said at the start of the video, this will probably be the last time I do a video like this on the Harry Potter character specifically, although maybe I'll revisit that in the future if there's enough interest for a particular character. The only person who really comes to mind for me right now is Ron. But to be honest, that video will probably end up being an hour long if I ever make it, due to how badly he was treated. Otherwise, as always, thank you all for watching. I'm always interested to hear what you guys think, so definitely leave a comment and I'll always do my best to reply to everybody. And if you enjoyed this video and would like to see more, please do like and subscribe as it does help the channel. Thanks again.